Alamosa, Colorado, September 7th, 1967. When a 3-year-old horse named Snippy went missing, her owners grew concerned and went out looking for her. Their search yielded a gruesome and mysterious discovery. Snippy's body had been mutilated, almost surgically. An examination of the carcass showed that her skin and flesh had been neatly cut, her heart and brain had been removed, and a formaldehyde-like odor emitted from the remains. An autopsy also revealed that her spinal fluid had been removed. The events of Snippy's death stunned the community and remain shrouded in mystery, even to this day. Since the mutilation, an estimated 50,000 similar events have been reported around the world, most of them involving cattle.
But it was not until about the middle of the 1970s that cattle mutilations really entered into ufology. Farmers would come out and find some prize livestock that was alive and healthy the day before. Then it was just suddenly dead. It looked like it had been cut up in a rather odd way. Certain parts of the body looked like they were cut out in ways that seemed to be almost surgical.
Television producer and UFO investigator Linda Howe has been tracking the mystery of animal mutilation for over 30 years.
I began trying to get to the bottom of what was happening to all of these animals. They were horses, cows, other domestic animals found with the same pattern of bloodless excisions. The law enforcement called them animal mutilations. 266 some Polaroids from so many cases. And the first thing I felt was anger. And then I felt nervous, and then I felt afraid. I sat across from sheriffs who told me, Linda, we're not dealing with predators, disease, and satanic cults. We're dealing with creatures from outer space.
There are several explanations for why aliens would want to experiment on cows. One is that they're just looking for food, one that they're looking for some kind of information about vertebrate organisms. Another one is that they're looking for some kind of genetic material for some reason.
The closest answer I've ever gotten was from a man who had had very upfront and close and personal observations of non-humans in his work for the government. He told me, he said, the best answer I can give you, Linda, is it's a genetic harvest. But once you have said a genetic harvest from Earth, there's even a bigger question. Why a genetic harvest from Earth? What is being made with this genetic harvest? To what end?
The answer to these questions might be found in our ancient past, in the bizarre, almost Frankenstein-like experiments that were practiced by early civilizations.
We have ancient descriptions from Egypt where it says specifically that the gods created these chimeras, mixed beings or hybrids. We find paintings where you have a human body with a cut-off head and a red tube coming out of it, and next to it you have just the head of some animal, and in the next picture, because they look like comic strips almost, and in the next picture you see the same human body with the animal head attached to the human neck.
Incredibly, examples of strange human-animal hybrid beings date back to a time even older than ancient Egypt.
According to mainstream archaeology, ancient Sumeria is the earliest civilization of humankind. And the interesting part is the fact that their earliest writings are filled with references of these bizarre beings that descended from the sky called the Anunnaki. Anunnaki means those who from the heavens came.
But is there any physical evidence of these human-animal hybrids? If so, wouldn't we have found skeletal remains? The answer may have been found in Saqqara, Egypt, home to that country's oldest pyramid. In 1851, French scholar and Egyptologist Auguste Mariette explored a deep tomb dedicated to the sacred Apis bull. Inside were 2 sealed and intact sarcophagi. But when Mariette opened them, what they contained was shocking.
They opened the sarcophagus and they didn't find a bull. Instead, they found this black mass of what's called bitumen, a type of asphalt, and inside this stinking mass, they found the bone fragments of 7 different types of animals crushed up. According to the accompanying texts, some type of monsters existed during the time of the Egyptians, and so who knows whether or not the priests instructed the people to destroy these beings, to rip them apart, to crush their bones, and put them inside this stinking mass, and put them underneath a lid in the sarcophagus weighing 80 tons. I mean, in all of Egypt, we can find mummified remains of every single animal, but we find these sarcophagi that contain these crushed up bones. Doesn't that mean the ancient Egyptians did not want for those creatures to ever return after their death?
Thousand Oaks, California, May 2017. Ancient astronaut theorist Giorgio Tsoukalos visits the Ventura Biocenter to examine one of Earth's most curious creatures, the bombardier beetle. This little bug is a marvel of evolution, or some say, intelligent design.
Peter, good to see you.
Nice
How
to
are
see
you?
And this
All
is
right.
Tom.
Hi.
Hello, Tom.
Nice to meet
Pleasure.
you.
How's it going?
Tom is our insect wrangler and is going to help us set up a demonstration on one of the coolest animals on Earth, the bombardier beetle.
That's fantastic because about a year ago, Eric von Daniken gave me his latest manuscript for his newest book. And we all know that there are these multiple creatures that seem to defy Darwinian evolution. And one creature that jumped out at me that I hadn't heard before was this beetle right here.
This beetle is fascinating from an evolutionary point of view. And in fact, it's been used by many people to suggest that evolution doesn't work at all. And the reason is the enormous complexity of this thing. This animal is a chemical warrior. It's able to shoot out boiling hot streams of a really toxic liquid that have the same sort of mix as rocket fuel.
That's amazing.
And it can shoot over 500 of these bursts per second. But the process happens so fast, it's almost in a blink of an eye. So we have a high-speed camera over here that can shoot about 2,500 frames per second. And with that camera, we can slow down this process. And in seeing that process, we can work out the exact sequence of events. So let's set this up with Tom and watch this take place.
Let's do it.
Okay, guys, so what I've got is some non-toxic, very mild adhesive, and I'm just gonna touch it to the beetle's back, and that will suspend him in the air. We're gonna give him a little bit of stimulation with these forceps. Simulates the predator and makes him feel defensive. Oh, there it was.
While it is almost imperceptible to the naked eye, with the high-speed camera, the beetle can be seen blasting rapid-fire streams of deadly chemicals directed at any would-be predator.
Oh,
There it
wow.
goes.
How cool.
Projected it in that particular direction.
Right. You can actually see the squirts, the mist, the vapor.
The appendage which allows this to happen can rotate, it can move back and forth, so it can shoot this in lots of different directions.
Yeah, this is really awesome.
Dr. Ward has set up a computer-generated model of the bombardier beetle to show Giorgio the incredible process that is taking place inside its body.
You've got the organs that produce the chemicals, and two separate chemicals are being made. We've got this hydroquinone, which is actually a makeup of the organics of the creature. It's part of its external skeleton. The second one is a chemical called hydrogen peroxide, which is rocket fuel. Now, if we combine these two together in a chamber, what we can do is build this chemical material that's going to get really hot and blast out the back of the bug. So one of the coolest things about this whole system is got a one-way valve. Once this chemical concoction that's getting really hot starts reacting, the last thing you want is having to blast back into the interior of your body. So it can direct it, squirts out this super hot, super toxic material into that predator's face.
And one has to wonder, what was the evolutionary process of this beetle for that defense mechanism to even exist?
Yeah, that's the critical question. If evolution takes place in step by step, what's the intermediate? How does this thing not blow itself up as it's experimenting through time? How do you go from just a garden variety beetle to a super beetle like this?
One has to wonder if this creature perhaps was brought here in its finished form, or at least the genetic material for this creature came here as a finished product.
Could the physiology of the bombardier beetle be proof that there are animals on this planet of extraterrestrial design? The gases that the beetle emits can burn the skin of humans, and if the mechanism it holds within its body was constructed on a larger scale, it could be a very deadly chemical weapon. Is it possible that aliens place certain creatures on this planet so that humans can learn from them and recreate their abilities?
Throughout the animal kingdom, there are other organisms that also have tremendous abilities. The dung beetle is able to pull upwards of 1,100 times its body weight. The mantis shrimp, they can see things like polarized light, UV, infrared light. Squids and octopus basically change their body coloration and the patterns and even the texture of their skin as they move across different substrates, which is just incredible.
Many advances in human technology have been inspired by the animal world, an approach scientists refer to as biomimicry. Airplanes were designed to imitate the winged flight of birds. Military camouflage evolved out of observing the way squid, octopuses, and chameleons take on the appearance of their surroundings. Sonar used in the navigation of submarines and ships is a skill taken from dolphins, whales, and bats, who emit sound waves to locate both prey and predators.
We have stolen so many attributes of animals in the past for our own technologies. We're taking on this worldview of what an animal can do and using technology to rebuild it.
We're taking clues from the natural world in order to develop technologies. This may be part of a greater hidden extraterrestrial initiative, perhaps for a seeding of a technological and human revolution that we're just starting to see now.
The Nile Delta, Egypt. A small centimeters wide trail is cut in the desert floor by the rolling cocoon of a dung beetle. This strange-looking 2-inch long insect, also called a scarab, uses the dung as both a source of nourishment and a place for storing its eggs. It will roll the ball in a straight line despite all obstacles, and is the only insect on Earth known to navigate by following the light of the Milky Way galaxy. Biologists just made this discovery in 2013. But 5,000 years ago, with presumably no knowledge of its unique connection to the stars, the ancient Egyptians held the scarab as a sacred symbol, representing a link to the gods.
Interesting that a great civilization could pay so much attention to a little bug. But it appears constantly throughout Egyptian temples and hieroglyphics. It's a very frequent image.
At the Temple of Karnak, overlooking the sacred lake, where the pharaohs received their coronation, a giant scarab beetle stands watch, representing the Egyptian god Khepri.
The Egyptians saw the sun moving across the sky during the day. Also around the desert sands, you'd see beetles moving balls of dung. And so the Egyptians thought that the force that moved the sun across the sky was a giant scarab beetle god, Khepri.
And they believed that the sun was what is known as the Eye of Ra, which was Ra's chariot, or his flying machine. And the thing that moved it, they believed, was the scarab-headed god, Khepri. And the scarab represented Khepri, the pilot, if you like, of Ra's sun ship or barge. He was basically a pilot to the gods.
But could there be another explanation for why the Egyptians regarded Khepri as a pilot? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the representation of Khepri as a scarab, and sometimes as a human with a scarab head, may have been inspired by actual contact the Egyptians had with an otherworldly being.
One has to wonder whether or not these beings actually existed, because the ancient Egyptians were incredibly proud in carving their history into countless of walls. And according to the ancient astronaut theory, we all came about through a deliberate mutation of our genes. And so it is entirely possible, in my opinion, that some of those creatures that we see depicted in reliefs and in carvings might have actually existed in the past.
Is it possible the ancient Egyptians could have encountered alien beings that had an insect-like appearance? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. And as further evidence, point to the fact that the Egyptians' obsession with the scarab also extended to their funerary rituals. The Valley of the Kings, Egypt, November 1922. Archaeologist Howard Carter discovers the tomb of King Tutankhamun. Among the treasure trove of artifacts found inside is the young pharaoh's breastplate, which features a scarab as the centerpiece. The scarab is made of a yellow silica glass stone procured from the Sahara, originally formed 28 million years ago, when the sand was superheated by a comet strike. But why would the ancient Egyptians place a scarab, and one sculpted from material produced by a cosmic event, at the center of their pharaoh's funerary breastplate? Curiously, scarabs always played an integral role in the Egyptians' mummification process, often included during the wrapping of the body.
In between those wrappings, the Egyptians put a number of charms which served not just a preservation function, but a magical function.
There was a heart scarab, which was placed on the body. We also find other scarabs sometimes knitted into the linen of the deceased. The scarab was thought to be critical for the resurrection because of its power and necessity for it to be present when the sun rose in the morning.
The idea is that the soul, or even the body of the person that had departed, was carried by scarab beetles along the path to the next life, to the next dimension. It's almost as if the scarab beetle was some kind of device, not an insect, but a device that actually allows travel from one place to another.
Where did the Egyptians get the idea of resurrection and this idea that we could be reborn as star beings? It seems as if they were given this idea by Khepri.
Could the inclusion of scarab-shaped objects in the mummification process have been inspired by an actual encounter with the scarab god Khepri? To some ancient astronaut theorists, it's not just the presence of scarabs that suggests the Egyptians made a connection between insects and the afterlife. They say the mummification process also mimics insect metamorphosis itself.
The similarities between mummification and the cocooning process that a caterpillar goes through before it becomes a moth are really quite incredible. I think what the Egyptians were trying to do is actually cocoon the human being so that when he emerged into the next life, at the next level up, he would be transformed into something greater, more powerful, and epically more beautiful.
Southern Peru, 1927. While hiking in the foothills of the arid Nazca Desert, archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespe discovers what appears to be a large network of ancient roads carved into the earth. Years later, as airplane travel to the region becomes more frequent, aerial flyovers reveal nearly 100 other designs in the nearby landscape. Known as geoglyphs, they depict animals, flowers, and even a mysterious human-like being. Scattered over a nearly 200 square mile area, these lines and figures have become collectively known as the Nazca Lines.
The Nazca Lines consist of these massive drawings or carvings, if you like, on the ground. Everything from geometric symbols, lines, to animals, even fish, birds. But the intriguing thing about them is, number one, they're massive, and they can really only be seen properly from the sky.
There are over 800 straight lines. There are over 70 animal figures. There are over 150 geometrical shapes.
We have glyphs of different figurines on the ground. We have these intricate lines and what appear to be runways spread all around the desert. Some of these actually show mathematical diagrams built thousands of years ago, which really raises the question, why?
There's an enormous amount of unanswered and perhaps unanswerable questions that arise from the phenomena.
The largest of the figures is nearly 1,000 feet, or the size of 3 football fields, while the longest line extends almost 9 miles. According to mainstream archaeologists, these mysterious earth drawings were created by the Nazca, an ancient people that flourished in the region between the 1st and 8th century AD. The lines were formed by the careful removal of the reddish iron oxide pebbles that make up the desert surface. Once exposed, the underlying dirt, which contains high amounts of lime, hardened and was resistant to erosion.
The Nazca Plain is made up of layers of light-colored kind of rock and dirt with dark-colored rock and dirt just on top. It's very simple, and they just remove dark-colored stuff to reveal these kind of white-looking lines over the landscape. Like a canvas that isn't being disturbed, has maintained its integrity for hundreds or even thousands of years.
The reason why they have survived is because of the desert conditions. Truly, if you make a geoglyph at the Nazca desert environment today, it will be found hundreds of years from now. There is hardly any rain, hardly any wind. Anything you make here will last for eternity.
Teotihuacan, Mexico. Dating back to at least the 1st century AD, this ancient complex was once the largest city in Mesoamerica, with a population of 125,000. One of the most sacred temples at the site is the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, an enormous step pyramid dedicated to the god Quetzalcoatl.
Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, goes all the way back to Olmec times, to the BCE period. But the first place that we really see Quetzalcoatl is in Teotihuacan, the city just north of modern Mexico City. They build a actual pyramid, a temple of Quetzalcoatl, right around 250 AD. So it's probably Teotihuacan who really put forward the idea and the identity of Quetzalcoatl as a deity for the rest of Mesoamerica.
Quetzalcoatl was a creator god. He was associated with the planet Venus. He brought the rain, he brought water, he brought civilization, he brought the arts. This was the creator divinity for the Aztec culture. It was a flying serpent, it was a dragon.
Quetzalcoatl brought peace, harmony, and high wisdom, and a very high level of intelligence and teaching to this particular land. He was often depicted as a human being as well. He arrived on a raft of serpents and settled on these lands.
Quetzalcoatl also shows up in the post-classic Maya city of Chichen Itza. But they give him a Maya name. They call him Kukulkan, which is basically the holy feathered serpent in Maya.
The ancient Mayan city of Chichen Itza lies roughly 900 miles east of Teotihuacan, and at its center stands another massive step pyramid. This one dedicated to the Mayan version of the flying serpent, Kukulkan.
In Chichen Itza, there we have the Pyramid of Kukulkan, and every year on the 23rd of March, you see when the sun is going up, some lights and shadows, like triangles, climbing down the stairway, exactly the stairway where his head is on. And on the 21st of September, you see the opposite, Kukulkan, disappears. And it's only made by light and shadow of the natural sun. So still today, the message is clear. God Kukulkan has descended to the humans. He taught them for a certain period, and then he disappeared again.
So right there we have living mythology in a structure that shows this deity descending from the sky in stone.
You wonder if perhaps a craft landed here, and this light shadow effect of a serpent making its way descending down the staircase and then emerging through a serpent head is a recollection of that original event.
Is it possible that the Pyramid of Kukulkan was not built to honor a mythical dragon god, but to commemorate the arrival of an extraterrestrial spacecraft? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest this isn't the only dragon-themed structure that marks a location of alien contact. Evia, Greece. The landscape of this small Greek island is spotted with 25 mysterious megalithic structures called dragon houses.
The main dragon house is at the very top of one of the tallest mountains on the island called Mount Ohi. Mount Ohi comes from the word ohivare, which means to descend and to drive. And so this is interesting because, according to legend, the reason why the dragon house exists at the top of Mount Ohi is because Zeus allegedly descended from the heavens on top of that mountain.
According to local legend, these stone structures were built by a giant dragon to venerate the god Zeus. In ancient Greece, the word dragon was not only used to describe a flying monster, but also gods and other figures that had human-like form but possessed superhuman powers.
Now, when you put all this together, this sounds like the dragon house is a meeting place of heaven and earth. In UFO vernacular, that would be a landing spot.
In my opinion, the dragon was the craft out of which then the creator people or the teachers emerged. Our ancestors, basically, they saw a crew coming out of an airplane.
According to ancient astronaut theorists, some of the structures themselves serve as evidence that this was a place of extraterrestrial contact. The Dragon House on top of Mount Ohi contains megalithic blocks weighing up to 10 tons and sits at an elevation of almost 5,000 feet.
Archaeologists have a hard time explaining why it was even built there, because we are talking of this gigantic megalithic structure with a ceiling that contains blocks that are up to 10 feet long, 2 feet thick, at an altitude of 5,000 feet. How was that done? In my opinion, this was an extraterrestrial visitation where Zeus may have descended in his craft and built a day camp.
Celestial beings coming down to Earth. Gods descending from the sky. Can these events only be found in the ancient legends of the Zuni? Do similar accounts exist in other cultures and other religions across the world? And if so, what is the explanation?
We have to remind ourselves that our ancestors were highly intelligent. However, their technological frame of reference was different than our technological frame of reference. So they didn't have the vocabulary with which to describe or with which to name certain things that they saw. So what did they do? They used words that they were familiar with in their time, and so they tried to describe whatever they witnessed to the best of their abilities with their vocabulary.
Ancient China also shared some of the same beliefs that can be found in Egyptian, Native American, and Dogon legends, that deities arrived from the stars. According to Chinese mythology dating back to 3000 BC, when the god named Wang Di was born, there was a radiance from the great star Qi. Wang Di would later emerge from the belly of a fire-breathing dragon to become China's first emperor.
The origins of the Han Chinese people start with a story of a great god looking down with empathy. Here were people in poverty, in a beautiful, rich country, and the landscape profound, but the people were suffering. He took pity and decided to come down.
Wang Di arrived on planet Earth in a flying dragon. He had the power of flight. Wang Di could be anywhere within minutes, and he usually accomplished this by hopping on his dragon and flying somewhere.
Now this divine energy becomes human and is a great leader, the Yellow Emperor, who rules and unites the people, and there's a period of great prosperity until his work is done.
Wang Di brought order to the chaos, creating China's first empire. He is seen as a cultural hero and is credited with the invention of the compass, acupuncture, and the standardization of Chinese writing. One of his greatest legacies is the Great Wall of China.
When the land is prosperous, he decides it's time to go. And the great yellow dragon comes back, and he gets back into the belly of the dragon and flies off forever.
Now, were these dragons truly dragons in a biological nature? Or were they misinterpreted types of machines? Because, as we all know, dragons are always correlated with spewing fire and a lot of smoke. Whenever we see a modern rocket take off, there's all this smoke, and sometimes the smoke is yellow and sometimes it's red. So it's very bizarre how we have these correlations between the ancient times and modern times today.
Mythology is the effort to grasp what we can't grasp, to understand what is beyond us. In the Eastern teachings, the dragons very often carry people, sometimes on their back, sometimes inside their bellies. So if we think of them as a poet's effort to explain a vehicle that was strange to them, well, those sound like flying saucers. So it might just be a problem of translation, because after all, it's just a word. It's trying to describe something that's very difficult to grasp.
Just outside the city of Siem Reap lies Angkor Wat, the world's largest religious structure, with each side measuring nearly a mile long. Mainstream archaeologists believe the temple complex was likely constructed around the 12th century AD. But according to Cambodian legend, it is far older. Built in 600 BC by a half-human, half-divine architect who traveled between Earth and the realm of the gods.
Angkor Wat was built by none other than Priya Pisnokar. His mother is not of this world. She wants to bring him to where she comes from. And so she takes her son to what's called Indra's heaven. According to mythologies, the center part of Angkor Wat is a one-to-one replica of whatever was seen out there.
According to some experts, the layout of Angkor Wat reveals another intriguing connection to the cosmos. In 1996, author and researcher John Grigsby discovered that the temple complex appears to align with certain stars in the night sky.
John Grigsby made a brilliant discovery. He noticed that the entire Angkor Wat complex is a mirror image of the Draco constellation. In Latin, the word Draco means dragon.
If you were to take a constellation map of Draco and superimpose it onto a map of Angkor Wat, there are multiple structures at Angkor Wat that line up exactly to the main stars of the constellation of Draco. So you have to wonder what the connection is. And the answer to that, in my opinion, is that if you would like to show a local population where you are from, you have them build something in the constellation of where you are from. To me, those are calling cards where our teachers long ago came from.
Is it possible that the story of Angkor Wat's celestial origins is true, and that it was purposely designed to line up with the stars of Draco because this was the ancestral home of Priya Pisnokar? Ancient astronaut theorists point to the temple's many depictions of dragon-like creatures as further evidence that it has a profound connection to the Draco constellation.
In South Asian traditions, Nagas occupy an important place. They are considered to be very powerful creatures. They are shapeshifters, and Nagas share a number of interesting similarities with Chinese dragons, more specifically. So both of them are givers of knowledge and of wisdom.
In the same way that Kukulkan seems to represent some sort of a craft to the Mayans, we find the same thing with the Naga at Angkor Wat. They could represent a craft that is utilized to transport people from Earth to Draco.
Is it possible that dragon traditions throughout the globe originated with visitors coming to Earth from a planet somewhere within the Draco constellation? Curiously, Angkor Wat is not the only ancient site that aligns with Draco. On the other side of the world, in Ohio, a Native American serpent effigy known as Serpent Mound was positioned to point to Draco. And in ancient Egypt, all pyramids were positioned to have an entrance passage geometrically aligned so that Draco's primary star, Alpha Draconis, would be visible at night.
It's interesting to think that the constellation Draco may have something to do with these dragon myths. With all of these separate cultures around the world that are seemingly unconnected, whatever these flying dragons are, perhaps they came from a planet that was from the star system, Draco.
Virtually every culture has a legend about dragons or dragon beings that came from the sky. And what we're uncovering now is the revelation that these beings came from the sky because they're actually extraterrestrial beings. Is it possible that today we're subconsciously tapping into hidden knowledge, something that has always been there and is part of like the thought sphere of humanity?
Xinjiang, China. It was here that Wang Di, a mythical ancient leader known as the Yellow Emperor, is believed to have reigned throughout the 27th century BC. Viewed by many as the father of Chinese culture, the Yellow Emperor has been credited with creating traditional Chinese medicine, such as acupuncture, and introducing advancements like wooden houses, the bow and arrow, bronze coins, and a written language.
The Yellow Emperor is, according to most Chinese, a legendary figure. He's a cultural hero as well as a ruler. But at the same time, he's also believed to be actually the founder of Chinese civilization. In fact, just about everything that you would think as the basic elements of civilization is somehow associated with the Yellow Emperor.
According to some researchers, the Yellow Emperor, like other ancient rulers, possessed otherworldly power. And they believe the proof can be found by looking at the celestial origins of this mysterious leader. Like the Egyptians, the ancient Chinese believed their emperors received their powers and abilities from the heavens.
The Chinese emperor is actually called Son of Heaven. What that means is that the emperor earns his right to rule people because he received a certain guidance from heaven to rule. Heaven is always sending down these messages, telling the emperor when is the best time to harvest, when is the best time to sow seeds, when to actually wage a war. So it's very important for the emperor then to read the signs.
According to ancient Chinese legends, the Yellow Emperor was floating through space. He saw that the people of Earth were sad and poor, but he saw potential. So in order to help the people, he descended from the sky and taught those people different scientific disciplines.
And the Yellow Emperor comes down to bring comfort, order, and leadership to his people. So there is a direct connection between the divine realms and the beginnings of our personality, our identity, our nation.
According to legend, after ruling for 100 years, the Yellow Emperor made preparations to leave his earthly kingdom.
After Wang Di's work was done on planet Earth, he returned to the stars. And he did this by doing something very specific. He installed a cauldron, and the moment he installed that thing, according to the ancient legends, the heavens opened.
A yellow dragon comes down from the heavens, and he rides the dragon out into the stars and becomes stars himself.
Mysterious cauldrons, flying dragons. Could these fantastic notions really have played a part in the fate of China's Yellow Emperor? Or is there another, perhaps more plausible explanation?
Are we really just talking about folklore here? Or did something actually happen in real life? And of course the answer is that something was witnessed by our ancestors that they could best describe with the vocabulary that was available to them at the time.
When we look at the story of the Yellow Emperor ascending into heaven, this to me sounds like a description of some type of UFO encounter. It's very possible that the Yellow Emperor was actually traveling on a UFO.